This is the summary for the day of 708 for the 1st of February, and now conclusions. So first thing first, with the elephant in the room is the not elephant in the room, which is the missile boat. So this missile boat is interesting. So that I saw pro-Russian arguments saying that the boats does not the Black Sea Fleet is not going to change the frontline situation. The Black Sea Fleet does not participate in the war that much, and so the pro-Russians are dismissing sinking of this missile boat. I would argue slightly otherwise. So in the event that the whole Black Sea Fleet is sunk, let's say there's no Black Sea Fleet, there is no Russian Navy in the Black Sea. What is the implication? The implication is that NATO or any other navies in support of Ukraine will be able to go straight directly into Odessa or to the region, to Ukraine. They can reinforce and help to provide supplies, reinforcement, equipments more easily, because they can actually sail through directly to Ukraine. And even if the Russians claim that they will use air cover to protect the sea lanes against reinforcement and resupply to Ukraine, is not going to be effective because planes cannot fly around indefinitely. So which is why the ships are important. The ships prevents basically blockades Ukraine from the sea. The Black Sea Fleet's presence, they don't even need to go over here. Just by being present in the Black Sea is a naval blockade on the Ukrainians. So this is the main thing. So if the Ukrainians keep it up and maybe in 10 years time destroy the entire Black Sea Fleet, yeah, I think this is gonna cripple the entire naval blockade of the Russians. But of course, why I say 10 years, because the likelihood is very, very low, because the Russians are keeping their Black Sea Fleet away from the Ukrainian coast, and this presents a significant problem for the Ukrainians to hit these Russian Navy ships. As you see, the missile boat is really reported to be hit on the western part of Crimea, so which is over in this area here, western part of Crimea. Most of the Black Sea Fleet right now is very far away. I think over there, very, very far away. I think south of Sochi, or maybe Novorossiysk, probably here. And it's very hard for the Ukrainians to launch suicide drones at this position because it's a bit far. Previously, they used container ships to hide the drones and do sudden attacks. This is no longer possible because of how the Russians learn of this strategy, and they have made a lot more restrictions and verification and protections in this area here. So, but the Russian Navy will still need to patrol in this area, which is why they got sunk. So we go into the front line. As I mentioned in the SITREP, I think this Russian push in Ivanivka is interesting. It's going to be very hard though. The Ukrainians have very strong defense in this area here. This is probably just to continue to draw Ukrainian forces away from the salients that the Russians have developed over at Avdiivka. So yeah, it is definitely going to pose problems for the Ukrainians if the Russians continue to push in this direction. And once enough distractions away from Avdiivka or Kremelny region, the Russian forces will start to attack Pivshane. This is probably what will happen. So there's nothing over at the Svetove front. It went quiet. Crimea, nothing much to talk about. So over at Siversk, Verkhnokamyanske attack is more concerning, I would say, because if the Russians are able to attack into the village itself, a push towards Siversk is actually not that far away, and an attack on Siversk, causing the battle to be waged within this area here, will collapse the entire front line in these two areas here, because the Russians will be able to cut off all reinforcement route and cause a major collapse of the entire front line. So Verkhnokamyanske is super important. The Ukrainians must hold this position if they want to keep the entire Siversk front. So we will continue to monitor and see how this progress over the Siversk front. If you want to watch the full uninterrupted SITREP, all the way from the frontline changes to the strategic tactical report to the conclusions, all in one video with no advertisement, do support DPA on Patreon, Locals, Boosty, YouTube membership, and coffee. Become a DPA Sergeant, Officer, and General, and you'll get access to a totally uninterrupted and no ads SITREP. Over the Bakhmut front, I think everything is very stagnant. I think nothing much to really talk about today. Nothing about New-York. As I mentioned in the SITREP, this entire front line over at New-York is among the heaviest fortified positions. There is basically no way the Russians is going to penetrate through without suffering major losses for two cities, New York and Torres. This New York, that has very low strategic importance. So I don't think they're going to do this. These cities are meant to be bypassed, to be go around. So that's what they are for me. And over the Avdiivka front, this is significant. This is a very, very major development over this Avdiivka front. This breakthrough is unexpected. We do already know that the Russians have been pushing in this direction for some time. It's just that this breakthrough come as a very sudden information. We do not have any information that the Russians have succeeded in pushing forward in the north, and suddenly they are now in the city itself. So if you look at where the geolocation at this position, this is basically already inside the city. Essentially, this is basically the suburb. The further north, this is Dacha. So this is actually the summer houses. But in this area, this is considered the suburb already. They are already inside Avdiivka itself. And once they are inside, the Russian forces can use infantry to continue to spread out, and it's going to be very hard to catch. Which means that the Ukrainian forces will have to go in with their own infantry and of course armored vehicles to support them, and house-to-house fighting is going to be very, very difficult for both sides actually. So but this is a breakthrough. So this is a important breakthrough, and this also comes as a reflection. Is very similar to the situation in the south where the Russians have this major break. But the Russians currently is being stuck in the south. The Ukrainians are holding them back in this area here. The Russians cannot push out, and it just shows how difficult it is for the Russians or to fight the Ukrainians, because the Ukrainians do defend very, very well. Otherwise, we will continue to monitor this situation. If the Ukrainians get too busy with these two teeth that is biting them down, the Russians is going to go in this area here a lot easier. This area here is going to fall very, very easily. And particularly, I also just now mentioned in the SITREP, I want to repeat again, is that if the Russians are already here, they can actually push towards the lake, close up this area here, and this will cause the Ukrainians to be unable to reinforce the front line that is currently in this area here. They will find it very hard to reinforce this area because they will have to go around, and by going around, the Russians are already in this area here. If this push towards the lake succeeded, they will blockade this area. The entire Ukrainian forces in this area will be in the north of the lake will be encircled or operationally encircled. No, it's actual physical encirclement, and it will collapse. The entire line will collapse. So I predict that if this happens, the Russians is going to easily take the entire area here, and we'll see a massive change in terms of the front line. And so this is very, very significant. So and then with the fall of this entire northern part, then we'll see the fighting to be focused on this area. And we already know that the Russians are already pushing in the east. This is going to collapse the entire front line over here as well. So it's going to be there's going to be a cascading effect. And with all this falling, the Ukrainians will not be able to reinforce and resupply the Donetsk filtration station, and then that will collapse. And this is going to be very fast. This entire collapse will come very, very fast if the Ukrainians allow this cascading effect to continue. So so Avdiivka is very significant. We will continue to monitor to see how this progress. Avdiivka is not Bakhmut. Avdiivka is a heavily fortified region. However, unlike Bakhmut have around 2 to 3 escape routes, of or lifelines. Avdiivka have only one lifeline. There's only one road, only this road. So Avdiivka is stronger and weaker at the same time as compared to the Bakhmut city. So the Battle of Bakhmut versus the Battle of Avdiivka, they're going to have a lot of similarities, but they are also going to be rather different strategically speaking. So moving out, the Russians have continued to lose grounds in the south, in this area here, which is predictable because the Russians will find it very hard to reinforce the area, while the Russians are mainly pushing from the north so they can close up the front line. So once they close up, then of course then they can actually launch a real assault into Novomykhailivka. So that's predictable. Yeah, so this is the other significant one, the Russian pushing out, but I saw around 4 or 5 or 3 or 4 armored vehicles. So it just shows how difficult it is. Even you have an armored feast attacking into a frontline region, you can still fail. So I'm not sure how well the Russians can hold that position, or maybe they can't. And what else can I talk about? Okay, Zolota Nyva. So this area here, worth talking about. So if you look out into the bigger picture, if the Russians are able to capture Zolota Nyva, let's say this succeeded, they can totally bypass this entire area. This entire area will be pointless. The Russians can just push towards Siversk, and then they can head towards Velika Novosilka and collapse this entire front line over on the eastern bank. They can attack northward towards Constantinople, and then once they reach around this area here, this entire area here will then be compromised. It's not going to collapse yet, but it's going to be compromised. And if the Russians continue to push and capture Constantinople and Avdiivka, then this area is going to compromise, and this entire area will collapse. So this direction is actually strategically very advantageous. So I don't expect the Ukrainians going to let go easily. I'm expecting them to further reinforce and making sure that Zolota Nyva don't fall, because this is the alternative. Zolota Nyva is the alternative for the Russians to avoid going through this very, very hard line. This line is so difficult to go through. As you can see, the front line changes over this region very, very slowly. So which is why Zolota Nyva is the one that I will be watching. This is the area that I think the Ukrainians need to focus, or need to make sure that it doesn't fall, because the Russians will be able to benefit a lot. Just by going through this, they will avoid the Battle of Voleda, they will avoid the Battle of Konstantinivka, they don't even need to fight Novomykhailivka. All these major fortress towns or settlements is going to just collapse on its own. So yeah, so this is the main thing why I keep focusing on Zolota Nyva. Otherwise, I think the rest of the front line, Orikhiv is just going to be a distraction now. I don't think the Russians are intending to attack Orikhiv at all. And this mosquito attack against the Krynky sector will continue. It's going to continue to be very irritating for the Ukrainian forces, like my nose. My nose. And yeah, and Krynky continues to be a thing. So it's getting very crinky already, very cringy. But no, Ukrainian forces continue to hold this position at huge cost. And the cost is not in the front line. It's not just the infantry that is dying, trying to hold that beachhead, but it is the heavy equipment that is getting hit in the rear in support of this operation that is actually more costly. So anyway, yeah, so this is the conclusions and the entire wrap by summary for the day of 708 for the 1st of February. So do press the like button, subscribe, and for those watching on the paywall, behind the paywall in Patreon, Boosty Locals, Coffee, YouTube membership, thank you for your support, and do continue to support, because it is through your support and subscriptions and monthly contributions that keeps me going, because the views are low means the revenues are low, and it is through you DPA sergeants, officers, that is allowing me to continue without panicking. Yeah, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next update.